Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Land Your Ground. I'm your host Chase Burns here, and today we have a special guest in studio for episode 3. This is Curt Geier with Working Class Bowhunter. We're going to talk about purchasing your first piece of ground, hunting land in general, and a lot of cool ways to help achieve that. So I'm very excited to have him in with us. Well, welcome to the show, Curt.
Thanks for having me, man. I didn't have to leave the neighborhood. It's kind of nice.
Super excited this morning, guys, to have on a guest who is very familiar to the microphone and camera. And this is a guy that if you're a deer hunter, especially a bow hunter these days, you've heard the name or you've seen and heard his program before. But Curt's got quite a big following with Working Class Bowhunter, and it's really been awesome the last few years to just really see that take off. You're reaching a lot of people, being a positive advocate for archery hunting especially, but just deer hunting in general. And we need more people like that out there. So glad to get to know you, and glad we've kind of become friends over the last couple of years. And thanks for coming on here to talk to us about land today.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate you saying all that. Maybe giving me more credit than I deserve for WCB, but it's been fun. We're going on 9 years of podcasting in March, so
that's big.
Coming
man.
Close, you know. It's been a grind. It's been a side hustle turned full-time gig in the last couple of years. So.
Right, kind of started. Go back to. Let's talk about WCB for a little bit. Tell me in the humble beginnings, where were you then, and what did your setup look like, and how'd you decide? Hey, this is something that I want to use my voice and BS about hunting.
So I've always been a fan of outdoor content in general, and so this is like 2014 time frame. So I was working as a heavy equipment operator on the Mississippi River. Hated my job. Didn't love my job. Okay, I'll say that. So, but it was a good job for my age, early 20s, and I kind of did some of the outdoor film stuff, and decided that was just like I didn't really enjoy that as much. But I was a really big fan of podcasts at the time, like when Joe Rogan first got started, and that helped get me through my workday. And I'm like, there's got to be something hunting related that I can just like listen to, dive into, get me through my day. And there wasn't anything that like at the time related to me. Yeah. I'm like, that'd be kind of fun to do that.
Right. Fuels your interest.
Yeah. And kind of like fit my vibe. There was some hunting podcasts, but it was very like,
a little dry.
So dry that it just was hard to listen to for me.
Yep.
And so I'm like, that'd be fun to do. Like maybe if I don't want to do the hunting film stuff, I can do the podcast stuff, because I see an opening in what I thought, the market of, the unknown market of hunting podcasts at the time. So basically just got some cheap equipment from Guitar Center and sat in lawn chairs in a room in our house, and me and a few buddies started WCB. And it slowly progressed and took us, we were kind of raw and raunchy and
Unfiltered
is probably the best way to put it. And but at the time there wasn't really like a group of hunting podcasts out there. So for the first 4 years, I felt like we spent more time plugging what a podcast was in the hunting realm. And by the time we plugged what that was, everyone was over listening to us. We could never actually plug our show. So then we started doing the trade show circuit with a booth, and everyone would be like, what's a podcast? We're like, oh, a podcast is this. It's like internet radio. And this is what we do in podcast. And then they were over it. They didn't want to hear anymore. So now it's like, oh, you guys are on Spotify? Yeah. It's like, okay, it's gone so far from 2015 to now. And we're lucky we hit it right.
Yeah.
I think timing was everything for us.
Timing is everything. Yeah. But also persistence. When you guys first started, you did, probably took you a while to kind of gain a bit of a following. And now, it's, you can be humble about it, so I don't have to be for you, but it's huge. You've really kind of blown up into something where most of the people that I talk to, or that in my line of work, if they're asking about what's the hunting like or whatever, I'll say, well, are you familiar with, Working Class Bowhunter? And I'll reference it because a lot of them are, most of them are. And I'm like, well, at least 3 or 4 of the guys in that are all from this area. They all kind of hunt in,
Right.
3 or 4 counties or whatever in this area. So they're like, oh, okay. Well, they're familiar enough with your content. They know,
Interesting. Yeah.
What you guys are like and what the hunting is like through you, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. It did take a long time to get an audience. It felt so conceited at first. And we were really just doing it for fun because we were passionate about hunting. We didn't
Yeah.
have an audience. So it's funny. It's like everyone's like, oh, they're only doing it for attention. It's like, well, there was no attention at first. We were just doing it.
If that were the case, we would have stopped.
Yeah, we would have stopped instantly. But, I think 100 episodes, we probably launched over 100 hours of content that maybe not a lot of people heard every week.
A lot of them have heard it now because I see constantly all the people on your Facebook, in your group and stuff that people will be like, oh, I started, at episode 400 or episode whatever. And then, once they kind of got hooked, they start back at the beginning and they go through the whole catalog.
Which scares me a little, honestly. I'm like, oh, don't listen to the early ones,
Right.
But I mean,
it's cool, man.
our
because-
progression's there.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially if they've already heard how good it is now, they kind of, they're not going to quit listening just because they dialed back
I hope not, but
the calendar and caught some of your early years. But
yeah.
but it's very cool, and I think you've had a lot of the big names in the outdoor industry, and so that brings up a topic in its own. But what do you think of the term when you hear the term hunting celebrity? What does that mean to you, or does it bother you at all when you hear somebody use that term?
No, it doesn't bother me. What bothers me when someone discredits their hard work because they're a hunting celebrity, just use Lee Lakoski or Mark Drury, for example. None of that was handed to them.
For sure.
So that bothers me when people are like, oh, hunting celebrities, and they automatically just get all their hard work doesn't matter anymore because they've reached a certain stature.
Right.
That bothers me. Now, there is guys that are hunting celebrities that come from money and then they just go do what we all wish we could do for almost no effort. Okay, I get that to a point, but it doesn't bother me. I think it needs to be looked at differently maybe from the general hunting community.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't really have much advice on how they probably should look at it, but I think when they say that, you know what I mean? I feel like when someone says hunting celebrity, it's just like, oh, they only kill big deer because they're famous.
Right.
Well, it's like, well, how'd they get famous?
Right. Or that they only do it to be on camera. And,
right.
There's a whole lot more behind it than people realize. But I don't care for the term personally when I hear somebody refer to, so-and-so as a hunting celebrity. But
celebrity's kind of icky. It sounds icky.
It does. And you don't, but you don't use that term in other industries, but I guess because of the television aspect of it. And most of us that are, that grew up hunting in the last, 30 plus years or whatever, watching Sportsman's Channel or Outdoor Channel or whatever. And you kind of, you live vicariously through all those shows. So then those guys kind of become, I don't want to say idols, but they become I'm not a sports guy. Never cared to watch basketball, baseball, football, any of that stuff. But if I did, I would know who all those players are, and we'd have certain people that we knew the stats on and whatever. I didn't know any of that, but I knew what Mark and Terry Drury were, or what caliber of deer they shot in the last season or whatever. I knew those stats.
Yes,
because that's what I was into, and I think it's good that some of those pioneers started the industry, I guess, in that direction and brought it to the public.
Yeah,
that way,
definitely.
But still, I don't know. The sidebar, though, I didn't expect to head that direction, but it's one of those topics.
It's a good conversation.
A lot of people who will watch this, this is our two platforms are going to have just a lot of crossover, but we're a lot more broad in land ownership. And you guys talk about land plenty. You're talking about how to hunt the land, how to manage the land. How you talk about different farms and all this kind of stuff on your program. And a lot of the guys are hunting different types of terrain, and you've had guests on, people from literally all over the country, right? So people hunting down in the southeast and northeast and way up north and out west and everywhere in between.
Yep.
And it's it's cool to hear those stories from some of those people who are hunting their own land, some of them who are hunting private land that they don't own. Some of them are leasing ground. Some of it's just by permission. Some of it's family land, and it's cool to see. The commonality, though, is their connectedness to land. Like, they all love the land enough that they, even if they don't feel like they're going to kill some giant deer out there this year, they still have a lust to get into the tree stand every single weekend or every time, in the evening when they get off work or whatever. They're just, not everybody is chasing 150 class bucks, all over the country. It's not, they might see that on TV and they think that that's what they dream about, but that's just not the reality where they live. So, but that doesn't slow them down, which I think speaks to the fact that they're just super passionate about their time in the outdoors. The time that they get to spend out there in the woods and just be on a piece of ground and feel connected to it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Like, going back to that, like, not everyone could kill 150-inch deer. You only shoot what's there and what your goals are, but it is cool to get different perspectives. Like this coming week to hunt here in Illinois, our friends Rachel and Andy from Pennsylvania are coming in, and they own ground in Pennsylvania. So it's cool to hear them talk about like their goals and what they have on camera and what they'd like to shoot or pass to see what it'll be. And then it's cool talking to them when they come to the Midwest and kind of see where their mindset is.
Does the bar raise when they
come here? Yes, a little. I think their baseline raises, but not. They got a lease in Illinois, so and this is their first year on their lease. So I think they're it's above what it would be at home in Pennsylvania, but it's not like 180, right? Because I'm like, well, look, that's tough living here and hunting here all the time.
Yeah.
I told them like, shoot for 140.
Right.
That's a good line.
Yeah.
So.
So my boys asked me the other day, we were looking through some trail camera videos and stuff, a couple of the deer that we have walking around here right now. And they're like, Dad, if you shot that one, or if that one comes out, would you shoot him? And I'm like, yep, that's a mature deer. I would shoot him. And we have a mature deer right now that is just an absolute slob, like just looks like an Angus steer.
Yeah.
He won't score that high. He's not a super giant.
I love those deer, man.
Dude, he just is beefy. And
how many tacos would he make?
Dude, his name is Taco Grande.
Yes. That's awesome.
Yeah. So, but when that deer comes out, like his rack will not impress you. You know? But that's, to me, he's a big mature animal, and that's what's so cool.
Let me guess, he's an 8-pointer.
Yeah.
Why are they always 8-pointers?
I don't know.
There always are. Those big old bucks are just 8-pointers.
Yeah. So so it's one of those things where they're like, oh, well, if you shot that deer, would you mount him, or is he a trophy too? And in my eyes, it's a mature deer. So yes, he's a trophy.
Of course.
I've shot much bigger deer that would score much higher, but I'd still be tickled to death to harvest that deer because he was, to me, it's a different gauge. And I'm not saying that's better or that's worse, whatever. The guys that, just say, well, I just want to shoot a 160 plus, or I want to shoot at whatever.
Yeah.
It's got to be bigger than the last deer I killed, or I won't put it on the wall type of a thing.
Yeah.
Everybody has their own criteria for judging what's, to them, what is a trophy or something that they're going to
definitely,
hold on to and make a permanent fixture in their house maybe. But,
right.
For me, if it's a deer that has been living and breathing and walking through the woods and something hadn't killed it by the time it's 5+ years old, that's an impressive animal.
It's a trophy, no matter what.
And, and so trophy is a word I use carefully though, because like it is a trophy. But the minute you use that in the wrong context, especially where you're not around hunters,
that's true.
There's a negative connotation with it. It's kind of like using the word celebrity when you're talking about hunters. It's like you said, it sounded dirty. It sounded kind of a little icky. Yeah. Icky.
I'll go to Africa and oh my gosh, things change.
Oh, for sure.
It's crazy.
No doubt. And I'm sure there's a lot of controversy anytime somebody shoots an African animal. Because people, they're so beautiful, they're so majestic, and they don't live around here. So to most of, I think I'm going to make broad generalization here, but to most of like the American public, they've never seen one of those outside of a zoo or outside of National Geographic or something. So when they see somebody that shot one, you might as well have shot a unicorn. Like they make it out to be some sort of a magical creature that doesn't exist in the real world, and how dare somebody would harvest one of those. Yeah. But they don't understand the North American model for conservation, which was adopted by many foreign nations and what was implemented in 100 years ago and starting in Africa. And what they've done there is give those animals monetary value. So important. Without it, people would just
ranch cattle.
Right. And they would kill them off because they compete with ranching cattle and goats. And so it's a way of protecting those species, and those people here just don't get that. But
they don't. And, I normally, I forget that, maybe some of your listeners might not be all hunters, whereas I'm always talking to mostly all hunters.
And this episode can be pretty much all hunting. That's totally,
it could be. Yeah. But I like to back up the trophy hunting. Like, okay, trophy hunting is selective hunting.
Yeah.
What would you rather me do? Hunt older, mature animals, or shoot any animal.
Right, indiscriminately.
Yeah.
With a bloodlust. Kill
bloodlust.
anything that walks.
Yeah, so I think most people can be like, oh, trophy. Okay, well, that makes sense.
Right.
Normally when you break it down like that.
Right. Yeah. When any other resource that you manage, like if we were managing timber, we wouldn't say that it was a trophy tree. We say that we selectively harvest.
Yeah, okay,
we selectively harvest the mature trees that are ready to give the other trees more breathing room and more resources. And it is literally the same thing.
For sure.
So you're managing a resource in a sustainable way. But anyway, this is all just, general talk for the people who happen to tune in on this episode who maybe aren't hunters. But
it's good to cover. It seems beat down a little bit, but it's always good to bring it up and conversate through it. I think.
Yeah.
To our community, it's redundant probably.
Right.
But you never know who's tuning in.
No, you're 100% right. But yeah, no, I appreciate that because I know we've had enough good conversations and heart to hearts. I know where you come from on that kind of stuff, and I think if you're on a program where you are specifically, if somebody were to tune into maybe just one episode, or they caught part of it, or they caught something on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, caught one of your shorts, and somebody's just talking about targeting and killing a specific deer, to them it's like, wow, like these guys are, they would feel like it would paint us out like we're mercenaries, like we're like we're some deer assassins out there that are just like we hate these deer and we're just out to kill them. It's like, it's such a more involved relationship that we have with deer and with any wildlife, whether it's with deer, or elk, or muleys, or whatever.
Yeah, anything we're hunting really.
In the Midwest or in the country. But I think if that's what they saw, they could get the wrong impression pretty easily.
That's why I love and hate social media, man, because you can take a 3-hour conversation of a podcast we did, and there's one clip-worthy clip that's a minute long, and you read the comments on it, you're like, the whole episode's 3 hours long. Please go listen if you're gonna just hate on, but they won't. It's tough, right? It gets traffic and it's good, but it can be taken out of context so easily. And I don't know, social media is awesome and it's the worst all at the same time.
Yeah, no, I think we can all agree on that. And but I think it is great to reach people, and I'm glad you're on and you go on. You've been on a lot of other podcasts, and a lot of them kind of related and in the outdoor hunting industry.
Yep.
And this one certainly ties into that. We're going to deep dive into different niches that are land specific. There's 10,000 reasons that people would buy a farm or that want to buy land. And a big one in this area is just the interest of the outdoors, and it's specifically whitetail hunting.
Yep.
Somebody asked me not too long ago, well, what about waterfowl hunters, duck hunters, goose hunters? We're on the Mississippi Valley, we're on the flyway. Like, you don't sell a whole lot of waterfowl farms. And the fact of the matter is that there aren't very many waterfowl hunters that are willing to pony up to buy land.
Yeah.
They just don't. And generally because there's a lot of public land that they can hunt. And some of them, but when they do, they just want enough land to put a blind on. They don't need 40 acres or 400 acres. They need 2 acres.
See, that's interesting because I never think about, and I'm just not a waterfowl hunter, but that doesn't ever I'm going to buy land for waterfowl. I never really even thought about it.
If you own land specifically for waterfowl hunting, you can do a lot to really improve it. You could build floodable cells. You can plant certain crops, millet, milo, sorghum, corn, and then flood it, with diesel pumps or electric pumps and pump water out of a river or over a levee or out of a well and fill those things and really attract and hold a lot more ducks. And some guys will go to that level, but man, they are like the 1%ers in the waterfowl world. There's not very many duck and goose hunters that, which brings me back to whitetail hunting and why those people are primarily the ones that have the desire to own land. And most all of them that I've met, if they don't currently own a piece of land, it's their dream to get to a point where they own a piece of land. For
sure, yeah.
I don't know the stats on this. I've done a little bit of looking because I sure would love to hear it, but what percent, somebody somewhere has done a poll on this. So if somebody listening to this knows of this, drop it in the comments, drop me a link or something, tell me where to find that info. But when people win the lottery, like when they hit the jackpot, if they're a country boy or if they're a girl, country girl, if they're a hunter specifically for this episode's sake, what percentage of those people, like the first thing that they're going to do or one of the biggest things they're going to do is they're going to buy land?
100% of them, if they're a hunter and you win the lottery. It's what you talk about.
I agree.
Dude, if I won the Mega Millions, I'm buying this. I'm buying you 100-acre farm. That's like that fantasy conversation,
Right. Yeah. It is the dream. All of us dream about it. All of us talk about it.
Yeah.
But the sad reality is like what happens, or what I see all the time, is that a lot of those people, a dream is all it is.
Mm-hmm.
They think about it nonstop. They fantasize about it. They chat with their buddies about it. They comment on social media about it. But when it comes right down to it, they literally think winning the lottery is the only way that's in the cards for them. Yeah. It's not going to happen otherwise. Mm-hmm. And it's sad to see that lack of hope.
For sure.
And I think it's to me it's defeating to hear people talk like that, because the reality is like it's still not out of reach for any of us. It's just it has to be a priority. Is it a big deal? Yeah. Yeah, it's a really big deal. Probably be the biggest financial purchase that most of those people ever make.
For sure.
But it's, if it's not ever truly a priority, it won't happen.
Yeah, I think a lot of it goes back, like thinking from when I first started hunting when I was young with my dad, a lot of everything we hunted was permission pieces. And we didn't try to get leases until I got a little older and was like, hey, we'll split a lease together, and started making my own money. But I think a lot of like that, I don't know, maybe this isn't it. What does it for most people, like that impossible feeling of like, oh, this is almost unattainable or unreachable. I think it's because you kind of get used to being dependent on other landowners to get permission, and then something changes and you get kicked off, or they sell it and you got to go find another piece, and then you're not financially ready to buy when you get kicked off your permission piece, and you look and you see the commas and the dollar amount on certain pieces of property. You're like, oh man. Then I think that's instantly what just like takes guys' mindset and turns it negative forever trying to get ground. And they get frustrated trying to find another permission piece, trying to get a lease. And it might wire them negatively from a young age. Because I had that mindset for a really long time. I mean,
did you?
Up until just a few years ago, really. Mm-hmm.
So what changed aside from like, the obvious answer somebody would say is like, well, you started making good money. Well, then, that changed the mindset. I really see it completely opposite of that, but I don't want to speak for you, but I could give my own personal story on that, but I'd love to hear yours first. Like, at what point did you decide like, no, I think that could be a reality? And was it somebody that you met, or just changing your circle? Was it seeing that like, hey, that is possible, they did it, what?
Yeah, so for me, it was falling into like the awesome group we have at WCB. I consider Austin Chandler like one I look up to him for deer hunting, for land management stuff. I kind of go to him. He's one of my best friends. He's a little older than me. He's a farmer. He's got all the whitetail experience, the farm experience, the land experience. Mm-hmm. He's bought and sold a lot of ground and flipped properties. And I think just hanging around him and talking to him, he's like, if you find ground that makes income and you find the right size piece, if you broke it down this way, you'd need this much down. It'd cost you this much a year after the. And I'm like, oh, I never thought about income on land before. And that sounds silly, but I think a lot of guys don't really think about it.
No, you're probably right. There's probably a lot of people that don't think about that. And, I think of it when I look at farms as like, well, that's a marketing bullet. It has this much income, and I understand how that changes the formula from an affordability standpoint for a lot of people. Yeah. But I guess I never really thought about what percentage of wannabe landowners, people who have that dream, don't really give a whole lot of thought to that. Because what I know that they do is they thumb through a couple of the big websites, the MLS type platforms where they're looking at land listings in their state or whatever. Mm-hmm. And like you said, they're drooling over the aerial and, a couple of, really beautiful pictures or property tour video or something. And they're just like, oh, this is perfect. This is really what I want. And then they see the number on it, the price tag with a couple of commas and whatever. And next thing you know, it's just all the gas is out, and they're just, move on to the next thing to distract me from the fact that I'll never own that.
100%. That's what it is. That's what happens. Yeah.
So I think if they really never make it to the next step to say, okay, that does look like a lot of money, but is there any way for me to actually make that happen? What would it take for me to get to that point?
Right.
You know, I'm not there today. Clearly, I'm not where I want to be. And so you kind of have to shift mindset. Like you said, first thing is hope or a belief that it's possible. And if you believe that it is possible, then you have to take the next step and start taking some action. What would be the first step in your mind? Like what should somebody do to not, once they've accepted, okay, that is a dream of mine. If I'm just gonna, live my whole life hunting somewhere else and constantly losing ground and getting kicked off here or whatever,
Right.
losing a lease, if that's gonna be, the rest of my hunting career, if we call it that, I'm not okay with that. So we got to make something change here. So what's the first step in your mind somebody needs to do?
Well, I think I want to go back just a touch because I kind of always had that feeling. I love hunting so much. I was always scared that I would lose access everywhere and never be able to go comfortably and hunt and enjoy it. So I was like, I just need to get a piece I can lock down. I think that changed in my mind, years ago. And I'm like, if I could just get 15 acres, no matter what, I can just go hunting. That's all I want to do is go hunting. Whether there's deer or not, I just want to be able to go hunting.
Right. Secure a place so no matter what, even if I'm not chasing giants, I'll always have a place I can go get in the woods.
So I had that mindset in, and then hanging around Austin, I learned a little bit about the farm and the value and all that stuff. And then I was at this weird turning point and where the podcast was getting big enough to, obviously I'm not rich from it. And so the hunting celebrity thing is I think comes with not that I am, but I think people think because I left my job at John Deere and I do the podcast that I'm making way more money than I did at John Deere. Not the case.
People think you're rich. No, dude, I'm just really irresponsible.
I didn't plan any of this out. So no, I'm taking a risk and I'm at something I believe in that I've dedicated my life to. So that being said, in that transition point, I knew I was going to leave, or I was gearing up to get to the point to leave. So I stacked away some money. Not a lot of money, but enough money. And then what happened is I got to a point where Austin and I were going to the Indiana Deer Turkey Waterfowl Trade Show. We set up a booth there. And Austin was right with me to set up, and we were talking about, he was selling a farm and looking for another farm to roll into. And he was having trees harvested for income and what he's going to crop rent, and then he's going to sell hunts. And basically all these ways that he's making money through his farm to pay for a farm or another farm and roll into the next one. And just talking with him on the 4-hour drive, and I'm like, we were having that heart-to-heart confidential conversation. Like, I've saved up some of this money, and he goes, you should really put that in a farm. Like, look at it as like a live savings account. Because I'm fairly, I don't want to say irresponsible, but if I have it, I'll spend it. And I'm like, that's a good idea. I need to get rid of all this money and find a farm. He goes, just start looking. He goes, I'm looking. I'll look for you. And with you, I guess would probably be the better one. I'm like, cool. Still seemed kind of impossible. He's like, dude, you need to find a 30 to 40 acre farm that makes good income. You can hunt it. If you need to sell a hunt a year on it, you could do that. And that's what you need. And I'm like, that makes sense. And he's like, dude, you find one that's this much and it makes this much a year. I'm like, wow, that could work. Yeah, that could be pretty affordable, So that really opened my eyes. Like, okay, this is attainable at least if I find the farm that fits my budget. Right.
And pardon the pun, but it fits so well. But it's like it is affordable on the working class budget.
It can be for sure. Saving money for a down payment is the biggest thing, and then it's finding the farm that works for you. Like if I would have just bought some random ground with no income, and it wouldn't have done me any good. Right. You know what I mean? Like it had to fit what I needed.
Yeah. Wouldn't have got you where you wanted to go.
Yeah.
So I would say first step, once somebody, and maybe they just heard this and they're just like, man, it's convicting to them where they're like, all right, these guys are telling me that it is doable. It's totally believable. I don't have to win the lottery, but what do I actually have to do? I would say step one would be download a mortgage calculator app on your phone or on a computer and just start playing with some numbers. I mean, because guys they see the price tag and they're like, $400,000, $800,000. I don't have that kind of money.
Yeah.
And then the dream is over. So start with figuring out what you could actually afford as far as monthly payment goes. People are like, well, there's just no money left in, my budget. Well, that's because you don't have a budget, So if they say there's no money left at the end of the month, this is a Dave Ramsey type of conversation, but it's like, but that's the big brother talk that a lot of hunters need. They have faced the reality that their priorities are all screwed up.
Well, yeah. If you have a $700 a month truck payment, you probably got to downgrade your truck.
Dude,
if you want to farm,
that would almost swing you a small farm.
Yeah.
I mean, so there's a whole lot of times where I get comments when I post a farm for sale and somebody will say, oh, must be nice, or, oh, that's, nobody can afford that kind of stuff. Well, it's like, but those same people have a Can-Am side by side in their garage, or
with a boat and a camper.
They have a boat or a camper that they've used twice this year, maybe, know. And they spent money on toys because they love the outdoors, and to them that was immediate gratification. It was a quick way that they could have fun, they could get outdoors, but really the bigger dream would be to own a farm. But that's just not going to happen. So instead I'll just satisfy myself by spending my money on these toys.
Right.
Well, guess what, man? I mean, when I bought a farm, I didn't even own a pickup truck. Like we had a car and an SUV. I didn't own a tractor. I didn't have, we didn't have a boat. We didn't have a camper. We didn't have any of that stuff because, and if we did, I would have sold it to squirrel away the down payment,
Yeah.
You you have to be willing to make those short-term sacrifices to kind of build your snowball, and get that money rolling up to amount that, like, okay, I could actually pull the trigger on something with that.
Yep.
And, maybe that starter farm is, like you said, maybe it's 15 acres, maybe it's 20, maybe it's a little piece, but those are the pieces that you can add equity to.
Yep.
You can do some quick improvements to them to kind of, you can pay down the note faster on them, so you'll gain more equity in it. And then a couple years down the road, something else comes up.
Yep.
You can roll that through the 1031 transaction like Austin was talking about.
Yep. And that's my goal one day. I have, without being too specific, I have a property in mind that I'd love to buy.
We all do.
And that's what I'm working towards. But, I did the same thing, like, bought this farm. I'm fortunate it makes income. It's big enough to hunt. It's fairly close to my house. I found a unicorn, and thanks to you, we got it to work. And
checks a lot of boxes.
Checks a lot of boxes for me, and it's fun to go out there with the family. That being said, I don't come from money. I don't have a lot of money. That's just, if you work in the hunting industry, it's tough.
Yeah.
Like, I left a job where I made a lot more money and had free insurance and all the overtime I wanted and bonuses every year to none of that. Less money, I'm paying for insurance, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm making sacrifices for my happiness. My goal is to never leave our area, really. Like, I work where I live, I hunt where I live, my farm and house is right where I'm at, And so, and I made sacrifices. I got rid of my new truck and got a truck that's still nice, but it's 8 years old and it's a good truck, and I'm going to pay that truck off, and I'm saving money on my truck payment. I went and got a gravel car, so I'm not putting miles on that truck, so it stays nicer for longer. And, there's little things I'm doing. I invested in a tractor to help my property and to keep it clean and upkept and do projects when I need to do it.
And once you own a farm, especially when it has some income like that, it gives you the opportunity for a few tax write-offs.
For sure.
Makes it a whole lot easier to justify having some of those things, like let's say a quad or a side-by-side or a small utility tractor, some things like that. So if your farm is generating some income, all of a sudden you can buy some of those things, and then it's a whole lot easier to balance it out at the end of the year on the taxes.
And I'm learning all that stuff. It's all so new to me. Like, I'm on my own payroll.
Yeah.
I had, there's
Welcome
a lot
to being self-employed, and you're an employee of your own business.
Yeah. Illinois doesn't favor us too well. It doesn't seem like, when it comes to taxes. I'm learning all this, really the hard way. The first year I was like, I messed this up. I could have done this better. So, spent more money than I probably should have. So I'm learning all this stuff, and we had a really good accountant. I was talking to him about it. I'm like, hey, well, the farm makes this much money. Does it check out to buy this farm with a mower and a tiller? He's like, yeah, actually, that's a really smart move. So I'm like, okay, so I could justify that, and got a tractor at 0%, and it works out. It works out for it. So that's stuff I never even thought, like, oh, I can't have a farm and a tractor. I'm going to have this farm that's all unkept looking, you know? But it's cool how fast you learn, and I'm still have a ton to learn, and I feel a little lost at times. But we're not too far off the track here. Where I'm
to circle back to one thing you said there, which is sound advice for anybody, whether you're trying to buy a farm or you're trying to start a business or whatever. A lot of it has to do with the people that you surround yourself with. And I see this specifically in, let's say, the working class crowd, that are, a lot of them are in a job or in a field where they're surrounded by people who aren't very supportive.
Oh man, I can go into that.
Yeah, and I don't want to beat that subject to death because they all know it. Everybody gets it.
It's important to talk about.
They love to hate on each other. They cut each other down constantly instead of building each other up. And if you share your dream with somebody, say like, I've got a lot of friends and some family and stuff who are railroaders, and they'll spend hours a day riding in the 6-pack, the big 4-door pickups or whatever, 1 ton, 1.5 ton trucks, and they talk about all sorts of things. But if somebody starts to talk about their dream about buying a farm, half the other guys or more in the truck just ganging up on them and like, dude, that's never going to happen.
Yeah, that's
not, they kind of beat those hopes or desires into submission a little bit to keep you in check. And I think some of it is, they would call each other friends, except that a lot of those aren't really your friends. They don't want you to do better than them.
Definitely not. I've had the last 2 jobs I had, they weren't bad jobs, but it's like the people that you're kind of forced to be around those people because y'all work together.
Right.
And I hated this. And one of my good buddies, Tyler, he still works at the place we worked. I won't name drop it too hard, but it was a great job. But you go in and the first thing you see the guys you work with, it's time to go home yet? And you hadn't been there 10 minutes. Is it Friday yet? And it's just like that starts your day negatively. And you're surrounded by those people and they do the same thing, crush your dreams. They kind of hate on you. And it's just like this negative vibe all the time that you have to go to work and you have to be around those people.
Right. It's a mental grind. So I get it. And I'm not, I want those people to see past that and realize that you can't listen to that. You got to tune out that noise and just say, maybe it's not possible for you. And not that that's
misery loves company, man.
But you kind of if somebody is telling you that your dream is not possible, you need to just tune that noise out and say
for sure.
With that attitude, no, it's not possible for you.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to accept that,
Oh man. I mean, I could go, I don't know how many hundreds of conversations when when I still worked at Deere and was trying to hustle the podcast with WCB to get it to where I could chase my goals and make it a career or work in the hunting industry and do the podcast on the side or whatever I could do. I mean, it was crazy, the negative vibe of I'm working on WCB on my lunch break. Yeah. Or early before my shift started, or maybe I stayed late and I'm on a call for the podcast after I've already punched out at work. And I know what people had said about me in the workplace behind my back, what, a podcast?
Right.
What does he think he's going to do, a podcast for a living? And that type of stuff. And you just realize those people are never leaving that place.
No.
Because of their mindset. And
100%.
It's definitely tough. I can see how it eats people up and keeps them down and keeps them from doing what they want to do.
Yeah. Well, but then the other thing is, so that's one type of, say, outsider sabotage. But I think the bigger killer, which kind of compounds on top of that, is the internal sabotage, which goes back to that instant gratification. And a lot of those people don't have the money left at the end of the month to ever, I can't even begin to start a savings for my down payment because there's no money left. Well, because they stop at the gas station every morning on their way to work and buy a $5 Monster energy drink and a couple of scratch tickets.
Yeah.
Or, a can of chew and a couple packs of cigs and stuff.
Yep.
I mean, they're those vices that they're using to help make them feel a little bit better about their day or whatever are not only physically harming, but they are literally bleeding you dry. There's a lot of cases where somebody is spending, $2,000 to $8,000 a year on nicotine products.
Yeah. It's
chew
easy to do for those guys, man.
Yeah. And they don't think anything of it, and they don't realize that, it only costs a couple of dollars. It's like, well, that adds up big time, dude.
For sure.
And you start making some tough decisions about like what's more important to me. One, my health and my dream about buying a farm, or two, that I mellow out a little bit here because I put in a big dip. It's like, you gotta put on your big boy pants and kind of stop living like a teenager. And that's tough love.
It's tough love. There's a line there, right? And I feel, full transparency, I've been going through like that transition. I think, I'm 33, but I'm, come from a blue collar work background, and all the guys I hang out with and a lot of those guys go straight from high school into that, and they're around the same people, and it just creates like almost generational habit in a way, so it takes you to be like, all right, like now we're all at the point of the podcast where like we're working with mountain ops, and it's like health and fitness, and like, we drink beer, we do our thing on the podcast, but now it's like we all have young kids. We're all getting a little fatter than we were 5 years ago. Maturing. So it's like, we're all getting to that head of like, okay, we got to think about things, right? We're not 25 anymore.
Right. And you graduate to the level where you have to become a little bit more cognizant of your physical well-being.
For sure.
And especially when you have young kids and stuff, because then you're like, shoot, dude, I don't want to keel over of a heart attack at 45 or something and miss my kids growing up and graduating, and so you kind of start facing some of that reality too. I think when a lot
of it starts there.
Yeah,
even for the money thing.
You're right. You get out of your 20s, and all of a sudden you realize you're physically not bulletproof. So maybe I should make some smarter decisions about maybe I shouldn't pound so many Mountain Dews every day. Or maybe
Yeah. Well, 100%. I think just the mindset change. From daily health habits to, everything. I think that's where it starts, where a lot of guys might, wake up like, oh man, it'd be nice to save, if I could save a few $100 a month and roll. And it's a good change. It's a maturing change you go through when you hit 30 and all that. But I think I'm going through that, and I don't know where I'm at in that scale or time frame, but I hope that makes sense. I hope that doesn't sound negative.
No, and I don't, so that's, I love those people because I was that person, so all of those guys and gals who are at that phase of life where they're mature enough now that they're out on their own, they're making their own money, they're trying to figure out like, can I afford to buy a house in the country because I'm sick of living in town, or can I, whatever. And they're trying to make those transitions, and they have those big dreams, but then I think it's loving to point out to those people the things in their life that are holding them back. It's like, I want nothing more than for those people to have hope that their dream can become a reality, and then teach them or show them, lead them down a path that says, here's what you need to do to actually get you there. And if they knew that at 22 or 25 or 28, instead of when they get older and mature enough, that they're 35, 38, 40, once you have a mortgage kind of locked in, and you already have 2 or 3 car payments, and you have kids that you're saving for college and some of those things, it becomes a lot harder if you already didn't have kind of built in to the budget to buy a farm, first of all. But then secondly, I think those habits are harder to break, because you've been smoking or chewing for 20 years or 15 years or 10 years, or, you're in a bit of a rhythm, and it's a whole lot harder to make a lifestyle change that's like, no, you know what? The way I'm living, the way I behave right now, and what I'm spending my money at, going to the bar 3 nights a week, or, eating out a $14 lunch every day on my lunch break or something, instead of packing, PB&J.
Yeah.
Like, those types of decisions do have a huge impact on where you end up from 25 to 35. And if your goal is land ownership, then the sooner you get serious about it, like the faster you're going to get there.
Yeah. And I think too, a lot what's helped me is surrounding myself with good people I want to be around.
Yeah.
And it's definitely gotten better since I work for myself now. Like, I can really control who I'm around pretty much for the most part, all the time.
And yet you ended up here.
Hey, it's a good place to be, man. It's a good place to be. So, but I've been working on that too, is like cutting out people that aren't productive. They don't have to be not like non-productive, but people that are pulling me back from being productive. I've been working on kind of like not actively cutting them out like, hey, I can't talk to you anymore, but kind of phasing some of those people out.
You just don't pursue some of those relationships.
Exactly. I'm not putting effort in those directions.
Right.
And I feel like since I've started doing that, it's been, I mean, there's like no negativity in my circle anymore. It's all, everyone's there for each other. We're all rooting for each other. And I'm fortunate that I have a great friend group.
That is quite a statement. I mean, that there's no negativity in your circle is a big deal. I don't want to just like skip right past that.
It's hard to get there.
For sure. No, to have so many people who are successful that are rooting for you, that's amazing. I mean, that's really, really cool.
You know, I don't want to say there's never hiccups, because every relationship has things you got to work on, and friendships
people.
and all that. We're people, right? But as far as like daily, like day to day, just like leeching of energy in a negative light, like I feel like WCB, our whole circle's kind of got that.
Yeah.
Kicked.
Oh, for sure. You guys definitely, from an outsider looking in, you guys appear like a brotherhood.
We're brothers.
Yeah.
And we argue like brothers. Yeah. But that's normal. You know, it's all good arguments. It's more, you know, it's positive. I don't know. It's good, right? Yeah. It's not like real arguing.
Right. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about land. Let's talk about farms. What type of ground have you traditionally hunted on, like most of your life? I mean, river bottoms or mixed timber tillable, like row crop farms, cattle pasture ground. I mean, you know, what types of farms do you have experience with? And then from there, maybe we'll talk a little bit more like, what do you think in your mind, knowing what your background is, what you like to hunt? What's the ideal type of hunting farm look like in the Midwest?
So I grew up hunting most like timber chunks. So like the place I grew up hunting, it was just timber. I had no like crop to hunt, which is kind of weird for the Midwest. It was kind of hard to explain, but all the neighbors had all the crop fields.
Okay, so we're like islands of timber or kind of pockets that are surrounded.
This would be
by
like
crop
an
ground?
60 to 80 acre chunk of solid like oaks and hardwoods.
Gotcha.
And so all the neighbors, and it wasn't like real close ag, but it was kind of challenging to hunt, but I didn't know any different really. I just thought, you know, maybe I'll see one good buck a year. And it was tough. And now going back to my experience, I would have hunted it way different. But I hunted that growing up. And then for the other half, I got another permission piece that my dad had access through. And it was old coal slurry ground. So short spoils, steep ravines, strip mine stuff. And that's where my dad actually shot the Geier buck. It was an area in Fulton County.
Absolute giant.
Just stud. There's giants in there. They'd get big because the terrain was rough. And
right. It's tough to hunt that type of ground.
Real tough. But I was young too, so I was kind of more like following my dad's lead and some of the other guys that I hunted with, like I'll just go wherever you tell me to go.
He was like the hunting mentor.
Yeah,
right? I mean,
for sure. Him and Jim Burns, one of my hunting buddies, who just they passed away a year apart from each other. So just like a tough deal. Both my hunting idols in a year are you know, gone. But so I hunted some of that, and I wish I could go back to hunt it because I feel like I'd have a way different time on it. I had a great time. It was great learning on it. And then got some other permission pieces that had more ag with fringes and edges and some more like predictable terrain patterns like pinch points and funnels and stuff like that. I love it all. I love hunting all of it. It's fun to switch up the scenery.
And your farm now is kind of a river bottom farm.
River bottom, oaks, dense. I love it, you know. And honestly, when I got the farm, I kind of had the mentality of, like I mentioned earlier, I just need to get into something. And if there's deer there, great. And it holds deer because of how dense it is. And I have, I think, clean entry-exit strategy on it, and I don't intrude more than I should before I need to anyway. So I love the river bottom scenery. There's something motivating about sitting near water. It gives you, like, anything can walk by at any time. It's got that feeling, you know. I love that. If I was gonna be like, this is the ideal type hunting farm, anything with edges or fringes, however you want to word it. Of course, I like hunting funnels and pinch points, especially if you have good entry-exit, because it can almost be bulletproof. You can sit there all day, and one's just got to walk through if your wind's good. You know,
farms like that, they hunt bigger. And then I think the other part about having a farm like that is that you have more confidence about how forgiving it is. because nobody likes to sit in a tree stand and then feel like, oh, I really need the big one to come through right now because otherwise I'll feel like I can't come back to this spot for a while. Like they got to let it cool off because they know every hunt they make, they're kind of damaging the viability of it being a productive sit the next time.
Definitely.
So having a farm that really does give you like you said, bulletproof ingress, egress, or those pieces where it's like, you can get in there and hunt, you can get back out if you didn't see what you wanted to shoot. And you feel like nothing really knew that it was being hunted.
Low impact. Yeah.
Way different.
For sure.
And I agree. I like those types of farms. I used to not really like river bottom farms.
Really?
Yeah, dude. Even like 3 or 4 years ago, from a sales standpoint, I would have a harder time when I was listing a river farm, like getting excited about it.
Why is that?
If I really had to put my finger on one reason, I would say it's topography. I think, a lot of people...
Because there is none?
They're flatter, right?
Yeah,
The
flat.
floodplain is flat, so for the most part. So, or what topographical changes are a lot more subtle. Mm-hmm. And I just, to me, they weren't as aesthetically pretty. And that should not matter at all when it comes to hunting property. But if I couldn't get excited about it, as a hunter myself, then I just felt like, man, I'm really going to have a harder time, being a good spokesperson for this property or being, selling because, if I love it, then it's easy for people to just see it. I don't have to be a salesperson. They're like, dude, you love this farm. I'm like, I do love this farm. I would buy this farm. And so they get that energy as a buyer and they're just like, all right, this guy is sold on it for these reasons or whatever. But the river bottom farms were tougher for me. And then like 3 or 4 years ago, I was on one, and I don't know what happened that day, but man, I walked this piece. It had all kinds of deer sign. It was a pretty day. The river was moving and you could hear the water kind of churning and stuff. And it was just there, there were ducks that were flying through the woods and whistling and stuff. And so it was just, there was a lot of stuff going on all at the same time. I was like, this is gorgeous. This is really, really a pretty spot to spend time. If I just wanted to sit in a tree and just kind of be connected with God and, be out in nature, like this is a good spot. And then on top of that, like the trails that ran through it looked like cattle paths. And it was like, dude, there's a lot of deer moving through here. And it's just wildlife in general. And I got excited about it. And I thought, I have let some past perceptions kind of bias my opinion about would I ever own a river farm? If you'd asked me that 5 years ago, I would have said, nope. I mean, I'd like to hunt one now and then because I know how, what a great highway for traffic they can be. But that isn't the type of ground that I got excited about as a landowner.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I didn't personally want to own one. Mm-hmm. And these days it's like, it might not be the next farm that I buy, but down the road, I'm definitely...
You wouldn't count it out.
Oh, no, for sure. Yeah.
See, I didn't know what to think when I got the farm. And Austin's like, man, I'm telling you, I have a farm that's like this. It's on a river. He goes, the deer are in there. He goes, you're going to have a good time hunting this. And especially for smaller pieces, dude, you've heard people say this, and lots of people know this, that like it's better to have the right 5 acres than the wrong 500. For sure.
So it's, especially a starter farm, if you're looking at a 20 or a 40 acre piece, having a piece that's on the funnel, where you have the benefit of loads of traffic, where like you said, when you're sitting in there, any given moment, you feel like a giant could come through that I've never even seen on camera before.
Yeah, from 5 miles down or wherever, it's a motivating feeling.
Yeah.
I had that feeling sitting there the other day, and I was seeing deer, more deer than I thought. Actually, I see more deer on there, and I consider my farm good, but I don't consider it my good spot.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Yeah. I don't want that to sound negative, but I don't expect to see the numbers of deer or like the quality of like a big buck on there yet. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting there and I'm like seeing all these deer and I'm like, man, this is just awesome. Like the feeling of sitting there and like you're on your piece looking at deer on your piece. And I don't want to get like, maybe that's too sentimental, but like even looking at squirrels, I'm like, man, that's a tree on my farm and there's a squirrel in it.
The squirrel's eating my acorns.
Look at that acorn. He's eating. Yeah, it sounds super corny, but it seemed unattainable, and here it is, and it's like a different appreciation for it in a weird way.
I love hearing that. Yeah. No, I think people, unless you have experienced that, you don't understand why it's different. I grew up hunting, family farms, and I'm sentimental about those pieces of ground. I've hunted better farms since then. But those farms are still a couple of my favorites because they're just important to me. You develop a lot of history with it, I think, but any time that you spend enough hours on a particular piece of ground, you start to feel that connection to it, that bond with it.
Yeah.
And then you're just like, every time you see a new species of wildlife on it, like, I owned this farm several years before I started seeing woodcock. And when you start seeing, and then the first time I saw bobwhite quail come out of the prairie grass and like scurrying around their driveway and stuff, I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I got super jacked up about it. And, my wife was one night after we'd burned prairie grass, we hear, it's what Aldo Leopold called the sky dance, which is, the woodcock does this flitter, I think is actually what they call it, but it flies up in the air and it does this chirping noise and it like spirals around for about 30 to 45 seconds and it just does this whistle chirp and then it drops to the ground and then it makes this kind of almost like spitting and drumming like a turkey.
Really?
Yeah. And it does the sequence and it takes 5 to 10 minutes and then it starts it all over again. But it takes about a 4 or 5 square foot area on the ground where it kicks out all the grass and rocks and stuff and makes a clean like dance floor. And then it goes up and that's how it attracts a mate. And it does it every night right at like dusk in the spring. And the first time we saw that on our farm, like I was so stupid giddy about it. And Jackie was like, what is the big deal? And I was like, I have been in this area all my life and hunted this area all my life and I've never seen a woodcock. And she's like, really? Like not ever? And I'm like, no. And they need a certain type of habitat. And the forestry work that we had been doing the first 3 or 4 or 5 years that we were on the place had started to create that early successional habitat right next to the prairie grasses that we were bringing back. And it was just like we created the right environment and that animal came in and started using it. And like I was just so she's like, when did you become a bird nerd?
A bird guy.
I was like, it's not even about the bird. It's just about the change in the landscape that gave that particular species a home.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
The fact that we affected that change, and it was like, that would have never happened. If we hadn't come and bought this piece of ground and started doing that, that bird wouldn't be there.
See, that's cool. So I had an experience after season this last year on my farm. I just walked it. I went in there every day, like shed hunting, but not really shed hunting, just more enjoying it.
Yeah.
And
getting familiar.
Yeah, just getting familiar, man. And literally I would just go out there and like stand in the middle of the trees, and I just doing that, moving slow and not in a hurry. It's just nice. Just I'm not trying to get from one side of the farm to the other. I just walked it, and I was seeing these little birds on the ground that I get close to and watch. I'm like, what are those? I was unfamiliar. I don't know birds. I don't know bird hunting, and they're woodcock. And my buddy Judd's like, yeah, do you have a bunch of woodcock on your farm? I showed him just the aerial. He goes, it just looks like they'd be in there, and they're all over.
For sure. Your farm has exactly the right type of habit. All those young oaks and the broadleaf stuff out there in the opens.
But I was unfamiliar with them. I'd never seen them. Like really, like where I grew up, we didn't even see pheasants.
Yeah.
I didn't start seeing pheasants till I started living in this area. And there's pheasants on my farm and woodcock, and it's just cool to be around it all in your own piece.
Yeah. So you've hunted quite a bit in Western Illinois, but what other like Midwestern states? Have you hunted anywhere else here?
I've hunted Indiana for deer. I've hunted Kansas for turkeys. Kansas for turkeys, Indiana for deer. I think that's it for whitetails.
Yeah. So you've talked with guys all over Iowa, Missouri. You're really plugged in, connected to these guys that are hunting all kinds of ground in all those states. In your opinion, is this like you said before, like, I love this area, I live here, I hunt here, all of that. So you and I both have a bias to this area.
It's home.
But if is there any other area in the Midwest that you think kind of compares? Are there other places like, let's say Curt Geier won the lottery.
Okay, let's dream.
Yeah. So what would be, do you think there are places in the Midwest that would be more appealing to you, or that would you ever be interested in owning land in a different state? And if so, like, got any areas that you really get excited about?
Yeah, I for sure would. I think anywhere in the Midwest is going to be good for deer, and wherever you can get in. Of course, you always hear the southeast Iowa, south central Iowa, northern Missouri, northeast Missouri. I think it'd be cool to have options and own some pieces throughout there. Like Chandler owns a farm now in more central south south central Iowa. That's probably where I would, if was like, oh, that's where I'm going to go, that'd be one spot I'd focus on.
Yeah.
I don't like that you can't draw a buck tag every year there as a non-resident, even if you owned a farm there.
Yeah.
But Missouri or Iowa or even Wisconsin, I would consider. Kentucky would be cool. Northwest Kentucky, I think, would be a cool thing to get into. Velvet whitetails early.
Yep. I never gave Kentucky probably its due props. Do you know who Dave Skinner is?
I feel like I know the name.
Okay, so Dave is a buddy of mine from way back in the QDMA days. I mean, probably 10, 12 years ago. But he does what I do, but with another company down there. And they have bought some properties, timbered them and stuff, and really developed them and made them super cool. And I love following the stuff that he does on social media and kind of watching, because we have similar philosophies and ground down there that I just would have thought like that. Lower carrying capacity, like super dense, just, I don't want to say Appalachia because it's not, but it's, it looks like it. I mean, it's just, rolling hill after hill after hill of just solid oaks. It's Ozarky, right? And, but they go in there and create a lot of edge and just, manipulate timber, and then just like take a piece of property that might have a really low carrying capacity for wildlife in general, and especially deer, and just make it like, 4 or 5x. And all of a sudden it's like, holy cow, that's really cool. You got, it changes everything. What I didn't give that area enough credit, because a lot of it is just so densely, it's just solid timber. That it doesn't hold that many deer. And then, but when you start manipulate, well, the deer are there, and you can have, really good quality.
For sure. Yeah.
But yeah, it's neat seeing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it'd be cool to switch it up. Like if I had lottery money,
right?
Why not? Let's go.
Hey, we all still have the dream.
We can all dream. Right. Nothing wrong with having a dream.
No, it's just you start taking baby steps and figure out someday we might get there. Or if we don't get there, then it becomes a legacy thing. Maybe our kids will get there.
That's right. Well, my problem is I don't play the lottery, so I'll never win it. So just whatever. But yeah.
Well, so that's the difference between just having a dream and having goals. So, it's kind of, you get set on something that you can actually make a reality. And then, you can find contentment in the moment. Like, because I'm always ambitious about making it to the next step. Sometimes I think I want to say I get misunderstood, but maybe it truly is. And my wife is good about keeping me in check on this, but she'll say like, well, you just don't seem content. Like, I think that's maybe a disease or a genetic disorder or something I suffer from. But I truly, like, I'm content. Like, I mean, if in contentment you mean happy, yes.
Right.
Like extremely happy with, with where we're at and with life in general, and just all of our blessings and we work really hard for, but then, just enjoying, the milestones as we go.
Yeah.
But I feel like always having your eye on the next thing is also partly what energizes me.
Yeah, for sure.
And motivates you to work hard, and then just to keep.
It'll be easy to stall out.
Yeah.
I always say, I think you worded it way better than I always do. I have a operational anxiety all the time. Like
operational anxiety.
I don't know what to call it, but maybe I have a little bit of ADHD or something. I am anxious. I just am, and I think me being anxious motivates me. Or maybe it's just motivation and I'm mistaking it for being anxious, but I get jittery, and my wife keeps me in check as well. I'm very fortunate there. But
that's a good topic. You had a podcast here recently, and I apologize because I didn't know the guest, but you had one on there with hunting couples.
Yes.
And I love that kind of content because I hear, and I've shown properties many times to couples who hunt together who are both equally excited about buying a piece of ground to hunt on.
Yeah.
But more often, the reality is that it's the husband coming to look at a farm. Maybe he's bringing, a buddy or two, or maybe he's bringing his kids that are half grown or college aged or whatever. But and sometimes the wife will come along in tow, but she's generally support, and again, this is broad generalization, but this is from my own real life experience, that they're generally supportive of that. The husband probably wouldn't be there if the wife wasn't kind of on board with it, but she's usually not the deer slayer or whatever. So, but but I can't overemphasize like how important it is that a married couple is in sync about it.
Oh man, it's the most important thing.
If
probably.
it is just his dream or whatever that he's going to own land, and she's just like, why? Like that's so much money. You know, we could buy a condo in Florida and go vacation there, and
go to
you
the
know,
beach.
Right? And their interests are so divided that that it's not symbiotic. And in that case, it's like, man, I feel like there's a time where in a relationship you have to decide if your significant other, your spouse, who should be second only to God, that person is not in sync with your life goal of owning a farm, then you need to really reevaluate and change, not your marriage, but you need to really think hard and change your goal. You know, because owning a piece of ground is a fantastic thing. And I'm, you know, obviously here we are talking about it on this program.
Yeah.
But your marriage should trump that. And I'm a firm believer of that. And it, you know, there's a lot of people where like, they're like, I'm going to force this to happen. It's going to happen one way or the other. Well, even if they kind of are okay with it and they let it slide, they let you buy the piece of ground, whether it's the wife that's buying it, which I have seen, or if it's the husband or whatever, which, you know, that buying a piece. But then what becomes the friction point is like, okay, you bought it, we're spending this much on it. And now you're spending every other weekend there, and now you're buying a tractor, and now you're doing this and this and this. And the more resources you devote towards it, it becomes a subject of resentment. And eventually those types of things fester like a bad thorn, or it will come to a boiling point, you know, and it's super hard to, you know, there's a hard talk to have with those people, but it's like, understand, you know, that if you guys aren't in it together, if you're not both like equally invested in we're going to be landowners, then it's gonna be trouble.
For sure.
It really just is.
Anything, you know, my perspective, I don't know, maybe it's different than most. If I didn't have my wife to support everything I did, I would have had no energy or time to side hustle WCB while having a day job and having young kids to make it work. You know what I mean? And I'm very fortunate Samantha's been on board with everything. We've been together 15 years. Like, she met me when I was a young deer hunter, but still very passionate, and my dad. And so I was fortunate that she saw what it was, and that's what it was. And it wasn't like something that became a dream 3 years ago. And all of a sudden she's like, well, where'd this come from? You know? So I'm fortunate in that, like, started dating young.
It wasn't some midlife crisis.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I want a Corvette. You know, it's like, why do you need a Corvette? Yeah, it's not like that type of deal. But I'm very fortunate to have, you know, her in my life and how supportive she is.
Right.
And the hunts, and now like all the traveling and all the stuff I do now.
Right, because somebody, you know, even if they're both hunters in the couple, somebody has to hold down the fort. You know, when you have young kids, especially, you can't both run off to the woods every evening and just leave everything.
Hunt season's tough.
Yeah.
You know, like right now, like I told Sam, and she knows, I'm like, you know, the next 2 weeks are going to be kind of rough, but we'll make it up. It's every year.
Yeah. Well, and you literally kind of have to, I don't want to say you have to build up brownie points going into hunting season. Some guys think like that, and they're like, there's a scoreboard hanging on the wall.
The gold stars.
Right. But when we were in college, my wife and I both had this really good friend who was a college roommate of mine for a while. Super good dude, but just die-hard duck hunter, die-hard bow hunter, and wanted to spend all his time in the woods once the season opened type of thing. And he was dating this girl that he really, really liked. And, you know, she was sweet, and they were getting along good. Things were going well. And one day, you know, he started shooting a 3D league and was, you know, going every couple nights a week or whatever, 2 nights a week to go shoot in this 3D league. And, you know, a really good archer and stuff. So she made a comment to him about like, you're really spending a lot of time doing this. I mean, it seems to be taking a lot of time away from us. Yeah. And as soon as he said that, I'm like, oh, I know where this goes. And he said, he said, so we broke up last night. And I was like, you did, huh? He's like, yeah. He says, I just told her, hun, if this is a problem, you ain't never gonna make it through hunting season.
It's a smart guy, right there.
And he, like, I do believe, like, he genuinely, like, thought this relationship could go somewhere, you know, like he, and he, you know, he never expressed a whole lot of heartbreak about losing a girl. So it was, we were in college and he had a lot of maturing to do, just like we all did. But,
Right.
But he,
It was that easy for him, though.
well, I think he knew early on that like, this is a big enough part of my life that if we're not in sync about this, or you don't support it, it's going to be a big friction point. And it wasn't just like this is more important to me than you becoming my future wife or whatever.
Yeah.
It was more like if you don't like this now, you're not going to grow to like it more.
It's pretty smart on his part,
Well,
like he was transparent with her,
right? And and it seems like a heartless thing, like he just dumped this girl but honestly, it was like he knew that was probably the best thing for both of them early on.
Yeah,
that it was just maybe not a fit.
I think a lot of guys or relationships would like, it'll be fine, they'll change, and then they go down this course and it's just not good, So I mean, props to him. That's hard to do.
Yeah.
But
and I'm not advocating for it, but I mean,
but he was honest, it sounds like,
right.
And that's important,
honest with himself, honest with her, I think was, because if you just kind of like, try to satisfy him a little bit and just, pretend that it's not going to become an issue, then it just becomes a bigger issue.
For sure. Yeah.
Good communication. Right?
Good on him.
So let's dive back real quick. Want to talk a little bit. We were talking about hunting properties and what type of farm that you like best, or what type of farm I like best. But let's describe, because I think we've done a lot here talking about getting those people who have the dream of owning their first farm. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about what they should look for in a starter farm. Like we talked about, income is great, something like that, size that's affordable to them. I feel like I probably spend too much time talking to people about what the ideal hunting property is, and I think a lot of people do, because that's kind of sexy and it sells, and it's like, it's what you see on the outdoor channel.
The hunting celebrities.
Right. Yeah. I want a property that looks like,
Lee Lukoski's.
Yeah. Exactly. So you get that picture painted that like, well, that's what I need. I need to, buy something that looks like that. And so what I've told people a bunch of times, kind of similar, talking about like the relationship thing, is, I have had buyers that I've dealt with or talked with about properties for years. I mean, for multiple years before they finally find something, or before they just seem to phase out and give up interest or quit looking. But they're so focused on finding the perfect farm, because they know like this is a big purchase for me. And so it might be something that I only do once. And so I got to make sure it's the right property. And for a starter farm, what I tend to tell people is like, it's kind of like picking a life partner in some respects. It's like that, but then there's one major difference. And it's like that in that, just like finding the perfect person to spend your life with, there is no perfect farm. No farm is perfect. You can find flaws and things that you should change or could change, or that could be made better in any given piece of ground. So there is no perfect farm. It doesn't exist. Well, there is no perfect person. There's no living perfect person. Right. So we can't expect that you're just going to find, the perfect spouse or whatever, this, person out there that's just like, perfect in every way, because they're not. They're human.
Right. Right.
They all need self-improvement, and you can't do it for them, So this is where the difference is, and my analogy completely breaks down and reverses. So unlike finding that partner that you're going to spend the rest of your life with, when we're looking at farms, you're not married to it. You do not have to keep that farm forever.
Yeah.
So it's even less important that it's perfect. And unlike the spouse that you choose, you can change the farm.
Right. Yeah.
You can be responsible for improving it.
Yeah.
And so it's, there's people that get stuck in that thought train where like, it has to be just the right one, because, it's my lifetime farm. I'm going to have it forever. And the reality is that most of you won't.
Yeah.
Most buyers who find a starter piece, the piece that they can afford now, that gives them a place to go hunt, take their kids and get out there and start building some wealth and building equity in it and all of that sort of thing, they're probably not going to keep it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So when you're looking at starter farms, like, do you have any advice for people as far as like, you happen to find one that just checked enough boxes?
Found a unicorn for me.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about it, really. I mean, looked at size, price, the distance from where I live. When I was looking, I'm willing to drive hours to go hunt, and some people aren't. but I was looking Southern Illinois where prices are a little lower and stuff like that. So
Yeah, yep.
I considered all of that, but I never really looked at it. I don't think I had too much of the mindset of like it has to be perfect. Do you know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
never like I had more the mindset I want to get into something like, and then if there's deer and it hunts okay, then we're good. So
Mostly all deer hunting. Like you weren't looking at like a turkey place, or that was maybe a lower priority.
yeah, I
and that
mean
type of thing.
it's good if they're there, but yeah,
Bonus.
mostly deer for sure. But you know, like again going to back to Austin, it's like, you know, well, you could do this, or you could get it in this program, or you know, hey, I got a this piece of equipment. We can come in and do some tree work here and do this and make some edges. And like, there's always options for improvement, like you were saying, you know. So I had that mindset in. I'm fortunate I talked to enough people that own ground that have had one farm and rolled it into another. Like Mark Drury is one of my big mentors, and he kind of gave me the land background of him and bought one and rolled it in and got another one. And so I kind of had that mindset already while looking. Like it doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, the more perfect it can be for my dollar, yeah, that's great, you know. But I kind of like messing around on my tractor or going out and cutting trees or doing whatever, you know, and planting stuff and food plots and whatever I can do. It's fun. It's rewarding.
Right.
So
Tuning up a piece of property becomes kind of addictive, but it's almost as much fun as hunting itself, in my opinion.
Definitely.
So then when you get to where like you do some of those improvements, and then the time that you get to spend in the woods, the hunting just improves. And I think it's it's compounding, it's gratifying. It's like the more result you see from the work that you did, the more excited you are about going out the next summer or the next, you know, whatever. And taking it, leveling it up another step.
Yeah. And I'm like, so if someone's looking for a farm and they want to hunt deer, you know, I mean, if there's deer there, obviously that helps. But yeah, don't let something that's not like, I'm not too crazy about that. Don't let it discourage you. Unless it's like some unchangeable, like they're going to put a subdivision in right next door on top of it, like something like that, you know. But it's like, it's rewarding to do that stuff. And, you know, whatever you do for hunting or what you think will work, it's the next guy, when you go to roll into your next piece or you want to sell it, someone else is going to see value in that and go, oh yeah, he did this, and oh, I can see what he did there, and he cleared this. You know what I mean? They're going to see what you did and why you did it. I would assume if you did it right. And so yeah, definitely. I mean, I'd say get what you can get into, what you can afford, and start there and do what you can with it. You know.
Awesome. Yeah. Very good advice, man. Well, we've had an awesome discussion here. I'm really stoked. Yeah, I'm super pumped about this. I mean, I think this is good quality content that people who are interested in buying their first hunting property really need to hear. And I think I learn better from somebody who has, like, you know, we have those mentors, people who are like super well accomplished and like, man, they own tons of land. They've bought, you know, dozens of pieces and done it all. Yeah. But sometimes like hearing it straight from somebody who just recently kind of, you know, went from A to B, like from dreamer to landowner in recent history, like it's inspiring, you know, for one thing. So I think that's super important for people to see, like somebody that actually has done it, you know, that kind of tuned out the noise, the people who said, hey, you need to just give up on that. You know, that's not going to be a reality for you. And then made it past that and decided like, nope, I'm going to make this a priority. I'm going to figure out, you know, I'm going to learn from the right people. I'm going to surround myself with positive influences and people who are cheerleaders for this, and then just like learn everything I can in it, and then just like commit, like really commit to it, and know that like it's probably not gonna be easy. I'm gonna have to make some big sacrifices and drive a cheaper vehicle, or I'm gonna have to, you know, however we're gonna make this work. But your landowner story is awesome. And I would, you know, this is, it's not unique, you know, and it's like, I'm super proud of you. I think what you're doing, and especially, you know, at a guy your age, is like really something that people should look at and be like, okay, if that guy can do it, I can do it too. Right. Cause you're working class, we're normal people. Right. But there are a lot of people that I've kind of, gotten to know and gotten to spend time with that have done it. And like, that's why, to me, when I hear people say like, you know, that's a rich man's game, it's just not, you know, I'll never own a land, I'll never own a farm. It's like, first thing you got to do is change your mindset, and decide that, yeah, you really can. Now just figure out if it's worth it to you. And then, start asking the right questions of the right people, get some people in your corner, and start taking steps that direction. You can get there.
Definitely.
So,
well, man, I appreciate you having me, and you've been a big part in me getting my first farm, man. You were awesome to work with, and so I really appreciate everything you did to help me get to there.
My pleasure. All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining us, everybody. And this has been another episode of Land Your Ground. We appreciate it if you like and subscribe to join our tribe. Find us on all of the social platforms, and also start following Working Class Bowhunter here with Curt. If you haven't already, go check out them, subscribe. Find them on Spotify. I should let you probably pitch that.
Yeah, everywhere you can find podcasts. Deercast. We have a clean version on Drury Outdoors Deercast. Yeah, anywhere you find podcast. Most of it's rated explicit for the record, but the Deercast version is clean.
Yeah, so. And good quality stuff. Awesome people. So
thank you.
Thanks a bunch, Curt. Really appreciate it. Glad to have you on.
Thanks,
and until next time, find us on Land Your Ground.